La verdad que es difícil decir algo hoy después de la temporada pasada, ¿no? Pero no me arrepiento de nada. Vuelvo a repetir lo mismo que dije la temporada pasada. Confío en esta plantilla, en estos jugadores, en este cuerpo técnico y no tengo duda que todos juntos vamos a volver a pelear por todo.
Lads, lasses, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my predictions for the upcoming 2021 Premier League season. Yes, I know, 50% of my audience are from the USA, but as a priest likes to think in a room full of kids, fuck 'em. First of all, I want to get a few things across. The transfer window closes in October, and pretty obviously, it's September. The last week or so of the transfer window is usually pretty busy, and a few marquee signings may occur, which means that teams are better or worse than they are when making this video. So teams may be stronger or weaker because of player departures or player arrivals that ultimately makes them stronger or weaker than I make them out to be in this video. But with that out of the way, let us begin. 20th. West Brom. West Brom were promoted last season after spending 2 years in England's second tier of football. Under Slaven Bilic, they've looked much improved, finishing second in the Championship, an upgrade on their 4th place finish the season before. However, I just don't think they'll be able to compete at the top level on their return to the Premier League. Their side just screams Championship standard, and their recent signings don't exactly scream Premier League quality. They've got a few exciting young signings, but the question is whether or not they can compete on a consistent basis over the course of the long Premier League season. One might say to me that many said the same about Sheffield United and predicted they'd finish bottom of the table with no real Premier League quality players, and they finished in the top half, finishing 9th. I just personally feel that West Brom lack the defensive solidity that Sheffield do. On an individual basis, they're not very good, but as a cohesive unit, they work well together. I just don't feel that West Brom will be able to repeat that. Their first 8 fixtures are actually pretty good, with Chelsea the only top side really in there, but even then I can't see them being able to rack up enough points over the course of the season to avoid the drop.
19th, Fulham. What a fall from grace it's been for Fulham. 10 years ago, Fulham were beating Juve 4-1 to make the Europa League quarter-finals. But if anything, that shows Juve's fall from grace. I'm not being funny, but if you're a gold kit, then you probably deserve to get slapped up by Roy and his tricky cottagers.
You know, let's not take the piss here.
I certainly wasn't.
Well, I think you are.
Sitting there, they'll become a bit of a yo-yo club, bouncing between England's top 2 divisions. It's got so bad they even popularised the term doing a Fulham, in which a team does what a teenage girl does when they steal their sugar daddy's credit card and still end up getting relegated. I do actually kind of like Fulham. They've got some talent, and the spine of the team for me is better than West Brom. The likes of Tom Kearney, Bobby Reed, Nathan Scabano, and of course Alexander Mitrovic. This is a pretty good spine of a team, and I think they'll spend smarter this time, but their squad still hasn't changed much from the 18-19 season, in which they also finished 19th. I just don't think as a squad they've seen enough change to convince me that they'll be any different to how they were 2 seasons ago. I'll give Scott Parker credit, he's done a pretty good job since he's come in, but I still have a feeling it'll take a minor miracle to avoid the drop this time, especially given the quality coming into the division this season. Also, is it just me, or does he look a bit like Matt Pat?
A game theory!
18th, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa fans should get down on their knees and pray to God every night that they didn't get relegated last season. They spent the majority of it in the drop zone, and the only reason they didn't get relegated is because Watford capitulated.
Fucking hell. How'd you fluke that one?
Their defence in particular is the weak point. They conceded 67 goals, ranking them second in the table in terms of goal conceded, whilst and only by bottom of the table Norwich City. Villa need 2 things to stay up this season. One, Jack Grealish has to say. He's the most creative English player in the entire Premier League, and he pretty much carries the Villa team single-handedly. The other thing they need is a fucking miracle.
17th, Crystal Palace. Palace have been a pretty decent side under Hodgson. He's done a fairly good job, but they're very momentum based. When they can string together good results, they look like a decent side. But on the flip side, they can look abysmal when they can't get any good results. At the start of the season they play United, a strong looking Everton side, and a Chelsea side who have blown the budget on half of the Bundesliga. Their games after are easier, but assuming they lose all 3 of those games, I think they could struggle to pick themselves up. In May they play Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool, so towards that end I'd expect them to struggle there as well. However, I think at some point in the season they'll find some form and enough points to survive the drop.
16th, Brighton.
Brighton can be seen in both a glass half full and a glass half empty sort of manner. One could say that because they've lost Aaron Moy, who's gone to stuff his bank account out in China, and they've sent Shane Duffy and Glenn Murray to Celtic and Watford respectively on loan. On the other hand, they've signed Adam Lallana on a free transfer from Liverpool, who's a fairly decent player, and Ben White signed a new deal, who played excellently for Leeds on loan last season, has the potential to become one of the best defenders in the country. Graham Potter is slowly taking the team from a typical long ball defensive side, as they were a few years ago, to a more progressive, modern team. But it'll take a few more seasons of development to really see them climb the table, in my opinion. 15th, West Ham. There's not much to really say about West Ham, and I think that just sums them up as a team. Boring and just kind of there. The players aren't happy with the owners for selling players they think have a future there, and I think they'll improve from last season and avoid a relegation battle. 14th, Burnley. Sean Dyche deserves a medal for what he's done at that club. On a shoestring budget, he's taken them to Europe and they finished 10th last season. However, with a few of their key players gone and Tarkowski potentially going to West Ham if they cough up the 50 million for him, Burnley may slip down the table a bit. Still think they'll survive though. 13th, Leeds United. Leeds are going all out this year. After over a decade out of the Premier League, one of the biggest clubs in England have returned with a bang. They've signed Rodrigo from Valencia and Robin Koch from Freiburg, a signing which unfortunately gave birth to this meme. There's rumours that they want to sign Julian Draxler from PSG. If they make this happen, then I'd move them even higher on the table, but it hasn't happened yet, so I can't factor that into where I put them. Bielsa is an excellent manager, and I think they'll do very well and show flashes of brilliance in their first season back in the Premier League. 12th, Newcastle. The Geordies must be gutted. A few months back, a Saudi prince was going to take over the club from the tyrannical Mike Ashley in a deal that would have made them the richest club in the entire world. They went from potentially signing Kylian Mbappe and Neymar to Callum Wilson and Ryan Fraser. However, these are actually pretty decent signings for them. And now that they've also signed Jamal Lewis from Norwich City on a 5-year deal, they'll look much improved from last season. 11th, Southampton. Southampton look really good under Hasenhuttl. Danny Ings is on fire at the moment, and players like James Ward-Prowse and Carl Walker-Peters are standout players for them. They recently signed Carl Walker-Peters from Spurs recently after a loan in which he looked excellent for them, with Højbjerg going the other way. They may lose some of that fire in midfield with no Højbjerg, but I think they'll be fine. 10th, Sheffield. In my opinion, Sheffield United won't suffer from second season syndrome, at least not in a major way. They might have lost Dean Henderson after his loan deal expired, but they've signed Aaron Ramsdale from Bournemouth to replace him, a fairly decent keeper, and they've got Welshman Ethan Ampadu on loan from Chelsea. Sanderberg was signed in January and he looks a real talent for them. I think they may look more vulnerable in defence without the shot stopper Henderson, but as a squad they're good enough to avoid any real issues, which is impressive considering everybody thought they'd finish rock bottom last season.
9th, Leicester. Leicester came mighty close to nicking a Champions League spot, but in the end, they bottled it. Post-lockdown, they were awful, although in fairness, key players in Maddison and Chilwell were out injured. However, Chilwell's since been sold to Chelsea for 50 million quid, and Timothy Castagne has been brought in to replace him, but having a right-footed player at left-back will always leave you at a disadvantage. Other teams around them have strengthened significantly, whereas they haven't. They'll find themselves a fair distance from European football this season. Although they are in the Europa League, and I predict them to get to the round of 16 in that competition this season.
8th, Wolves. Wolves narrowly missed out on European football last season via a 2-0 loss to Chelsea on the final day of the season. Nuno's gone out and spent the big bucks recently, and yet again they proved they should probably build a fucking Portuguese embassy in Wolverhampton, because the signing of Fabio Silva from Porto for 36 million quid is the 8th Portuguese player in the squad. Matt Doherty has just departed to Spurs, and originally Wolves are going to buy Maitland-Niles, but Arsenal no longer want to sell, so they may struggle if they can't find a suitable replacement. In my opinion, they'll once again miss out on European football, although just about. 7th, Everton. Everton had a very poor season. Under Marco Silva, they looked abysmally lost their job after a 5-2 loss to their Merseyside rivals Liverpool, in which if the hosts had been more clinical, they could have won the game by about 9 goals to 2. Under Ancelotti, they've improved ever so slightly, but still look rocky,
but now he's getting the players he wants, and the signings of Decore, Alan and James Rodriguez will much improve the midfield. And the potential signing of Fikayo Tomori on loan from Chelsea will definitely bolster their defence up a bit. In my opinion, they'll just sneak into Europa League football.
6th, Arsenal. People are really hyping up Arsenal. Under Arteta, they look more organised, they play with a philosophy, and the players look as if they've bought into it, and they've got big man Aubameyang up top. They made a few good signings which will upgrade their defence, but let's not beat around the bush. People predicted Arsenal to get in the top 4 last season, and they failed. Just because they beat Liverpool in the bloody McDonald's trophy doesn't mean they're going to tear it up. Liverpool usually tend to start seasons poor because they lack the intensity they usually show, because at the start of a season, players lack match fitness and they need time to regain it. Arsenal are definitely showing signs of improvement, I'm not denying that, but in my opinion they're not going to break into the top 4 just yet. That being said, if they sign Thomas Partey from Atletico Madrid, they really could push for that 4th Champions League place. In the Europa League, I think they'll get to the final. 5th, Tottenham. Arsenal fans are going to kill me.
Hope you get hit by a bus today, you fucking wanker.
For yet another season, there's no St Totteringham's Day. Spurs have made smart signings this season. Last season, they splashed the cash and it fell to bear any fruit, so small yet smart signings are definitely welcome. Jose wants leaders in his team, shithouses who are actually going to rough up the opposition. He said himself in the Amazon documentary that his players are too nice, and Højbjerg and Doherty both addressed this. In reality, Spurs and Arsenal are actually interchangeable in this list, and either of them could finish 5th. I go for Spurs because I don't really want to finish below Arsenal, so yeah, deal with it. In terms of the Europa League, I'm actually going to be ballsy and say they'll reach the final of it and face their biggest rivals Arsenal and battle for the trophy. Won't bother predicting the winner in the final because fuck knows. 4th, Manchester United. United offensively look wonderful. Post-lockdown they looked unstoppable, but towards the end they seemed to lose some momentum and their defensive fragility became exposed, particularly against Sevilla in the Europa League, when Harry Maguire invented his own brand of defending known as looking the opposite direction to the player making a run and getting the wrong side of your partner in central defence. And now that he's too busy trying to bribe police officers out in Greece, United once again look vulnerable at the back. If they can sign Sergio Reguilón from Real Madrid, that may help to sort out the back 4, but Maguire and Lindelof simply aren't good enough. The fridge cost 80 million Great British pounds and he looks defensively inept. The signing of Van der Beek from Ajax will improve them offensively, but defensively they'll once again look shaky. In the Champions League, it's the round of 16 for them. 3rd, Chelsea. Jesus fuck, Chelsea are like a rich girl running through Selfridges, buying anything they can get their fucking hands on.
He was spending money like it was falling out of his arse.
Havertz, Chilwell, Thiago Silva, Ziyech, Timo Werner, etc, etc. will massively overhaul this side, both offensively and defensively. They're pretty much a completely different side than they were last season. They'll push Liverpool and City quite far for a while, but in my opinion, because of their relative lack of experience as a young side, they'll slip up in a few places and in the end they'll finish a few points off 2nd. However, I'm going to go for a big ballsy shout here and say they'll reach the Champions League semi-finals, only to lose to Bayern Munich. 2nd, Liverpool. Current champions of England will likely be fighting on both fronts this year. After winning the domestic league in England after 30 years of missing out, not only would they aim to retain the title, they'll also look to take back their European crown from Bayern Munich, especially as the finals in the same stadium. They came back from 3-0 down to beat an incredible AC Milan side back in 2005. If they sign Thiago Alcantara, then they'll be even better, with Liverpool's current build-up play relying on their fullbacks. So a creative midfielder who's able to play between the lines and play those killer passes will make them a little less one-dimensional and a bit more unpredictable in the end. Also, apparently Liverpool want to sign Ismaila Sarr from Watford for about 40 million quid, who fucking annihilated them at Vicarage Road. I mean, he's a good player and all, but maybe they'll think twice when they see this.
This is it. This is my moment. Finally, I get to score against Liverpool.
However, I think they'll just fall short this time. In the Champions League, however, I predict them to beat Man City in the semi-final of the Champions League to face Bayern Munich in Istanbul. A defeat which will lead to Pep rejecting a contract extension, and ultimately it'll leave the door open for him to return back to Barcelona. Champions, Manchester City. Man City and Liverpool engaged in the best title race in Premier League history 2 seasons ago, with City winning the league by only a point on the final day of the season.
However, last season they looked horribly vulnerable at the back, whereas the season prior, teams truly feared them, questioning how they could even scrape a draw. With the signings of Nathan Ake from Bournemouth, Ferran Torres from Valencia, and potentially even Koulibaly from Napoli, they might just return to their usual selves, especially if they sign Koulibaly from Napoli, who will definitely upgrade their defence. However, if Liverpool were to win a second Premier League title, they have to do it this season. Lionel Messi said publicly the only reason he isn't leaving Barca is to avoid a legal battle with the club who gave him everything. And if the best player in the world joins City on a free transfer next season, then the rest of the Premier League has no chance. That being said, if Pep leaves, he'll likely go wherever Pep does. If Pep returns to Barca, he probably stays. If he goes to PSG or Juve, Messi will probably follow. If Pep stays at City, then the rest of the league may as well issue players with a bottle of lube before each game, because Messi's going to tear him a new one. That being said, if Liverpool do end up getting Thiago Alcantara, which I have a feeling they will do eventually, then I think we'll see one of the best title races ever, especially if Chelsea challenge for the title, in which we'll have the first three-way title race potentially ever in the Premier League era. Right, so those are my predictions for the upcoming season. On screen here, we've got a little recap and a few things I haven't talked about. So obviously got the champions, I predict Man City, and the top four there. The dark horses, I've got Leeds. Yesterday they played Liverpool, and they looked incredible. They lost 4-3 to a late penalty, but they were in the game for a long time and equalised 3 times. The bottom three you've obviously got there. The Golden Boot, I've got Harry Kane. Probably would have won it last season. We hadn't got injured in January. Most assists, Kevin De Bruyne is a fairly obvious one. The only other shout would maybe be Bruno Fernandes. For the player of the season, I've got Raheem Sterling. That's actually a very ballsy shout. Young player of the season, I've got Phil Foden. He's an excellent young player. That is when he's not shagging Icelandic chicks. For the breakout star, I've got Ben White. Everyone's saying Calvin Phillips, but yesterday I wasn't convinced by him. He didn't look very good in the role that he usually plays, is like the shield for the back four. And then for the signing of the season, I've got fucking Kai Havertz. I can't even deny he's actually a really good signing. And I don't like Chelsea, so fuck. Anyway, that'll be it for me. See you in the next one. A scenario will be out soon, but first I've got a special announcement to make in the next few days. So, see you next time.